Hey, it's Keith the Critic back here on Country Legends 106.9, and on the line with me right now, I have a comedic legend who's going to be appearing at the Topeka Performing Arts Center this Saturday, March 5th, 8 p.m. You can get your tickets by calling 234-4545. I'm going to be there. I can't wait. I've never seen this gentleman perform live, and it's Bob Newhart. Mr. Newhart, good morning.
Hi, Keith. How are you?
I'm doing terrific. Hey, we're all pumped up about your appearance here in Topeka. And have you been through Topeka before?
You know, I don't think so. I was thinking back at Kansas City. I played Wichita, but I never played Topeka as I can remember.
Right. I mean, we are excited to have you in here, and we've been listening all week long to some of your material, and it's just. And I hadn't heard it in a while because I remember listening to it when I was a kid. I'm sorry about that, but the Abe Lincoln, if he was coach for the Gettysburg Address and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, where did you come up with all this material? I know you've been asked this before, but did you have inspirations like grandparents that told funny stories and stuff? Is that where you got some of your comedic timing?
I don't know. You don't question it. You know, it's like those Indian tribes in South America that are afraid to have their picture taken because they think a piece of their soul, is being taken away.
Yeah, so really.
You don't examine comedy too closely because you're liable to not be able to do it anymore if you.
Right.
No, I don't. It's just I know Larry Gelbart, who's was a Sid Caesar writer, a show writer.
Didn't he create MASH?
And MASH, yeah. And he said comedy is looking at life through a different lens, and I guess that sums it up as well as you just tend to see things funny in the world.
Right.
That's the way you find the world very, very odd.
If you have kids and just normal life is funny in itself, and you can just tell stories around that.
Well, it was someone I talked to someone. As a matter of fact, it was Jack Riley from the Newhart show, Mr. Carlin.
Right.
Didn't happen to see the show, but he was talking about. They were talking about Sean Penn when he got up at the Academy Awards and said, Jude Law is a great actor.
Uh-huh.
And Jon Stewart the next night did a thing on
on the Daily.
He said, well, Youngman, Henny Youngman, I can't take your wife because I already have one. So I mean, he was kind of saying, Sean, loosen up. That's a joke. That's all it is. It's just. We're just laughing at something, and that sums it up as well as anything.
We all do silly things, and we're human beings. So there's jokes within just our own lives, and I think that's one of the things about you. It seemed like you were never afraid to poke fun and laugh at yourself.
Well, there's plenty of material there. That's one reason. But I learned from a master. I learned from Jack Benny, of course, who always made fun of himself.
Right.
Jack was always very cheap.
Uh-huh.
And in real life, I mean, he was one of the most generous people in the world. But he had no problem making fun of himself. One of the biggest laughs I can remember as a kid growing up was Jack was walking in the park, and a guy jumps out of the bushes. He's got a gun, and he says, "Your money or your life." And there's this long pause, And then the guy said, I said your money or your life, and Jack said, I'm thinking. It was just a huge laugh because Jack was making fun of himself.
Right. You relied on telling stories, as like you said, Jack Benny and all that. Do you think people have gotten away from that too much, just telling stories about normal life? There's, you're still out there, Cosby, people like that. I mean, do you think that's a lost art, that kind of comedy?
Well, I think... judging by what the little I've seen, and I don't want to sound like sour grapes.
Right,
like
exactly.
All these young kids don't know what they're doing today because there are a lot of funny young guys out there.
Right.
Chris Rock among them.
Uh-huh.
And I just think there's a confusion between humor and shock, and you can see it in the television programs that when they get in trouble and they can't get out of a sketch or a scene, they go for shock, and you shouldn't confuse humor for shock. They're two different emotions.
Right. Well, let's go. You just mentioned, of course, John Riley, right?
Jack Riley. Yeah.
Jack Riley. I'm sorry, who played Mr. Carlin. I remember watching that show, and that was a powerhouse lineup because you had Mary Tyler Moore, the Newhart show, and
we had the lineup was All in the Family was at 8.
Right.
And MASH was at 8:30. Mary was at 9. We were at 9:30, and then Carol Burnett was at 10. So
those days are, oh my God!
That was Saturday night, yeah. And we used to get, well, of course there wasn't very much cable at that time, so we used to get Super Bowl numbers. You know, we'd get 42, 43 shares at that time, and now 20 is great. You know.
See, that's one of the things. You know, you mentioned that lineup, and nowadays with TV. You know, so Friday and Saturday nights are considered like when they want to get rid of shows or shows that are at the end of their run, they put them on Friday or Saturday nights. Back then, that was the place to be because people stayed home as a family more often.
Yeah, people would. Yeah. Well, it was a golden age. You know, I'm not sure when we were going through it we recognized it as a golden age, but it was wonderful writing. We had incredible writers, as did Mary and Carol Burnett. Everybody, and Norman Lear and All in the Family and Larry Gelbart, as you mentioned. So it was wonderful writing, and we had a wonderful cast, and those two elements seemed to be the cornerstone of a good situation comedy.
And I want to ask about the sessions on the old Newhart show with Mr. Carlin. I don't remember the elderly lady that was in there. I mean, how much of that stuff was just improv? Because it was some of the funniest stuff I've ever seen on TV, just those sessions.
Well, there wasn't much. During the week, we'd improvise a little. We'd say, "What if I do this?" or "Why don't I say this?" But then at some point, you have to really lock it in. Like on a Thursday, which is when we would camera block, you really had to lock it in, and you couldn't deviate from the script because on a certain word, a camera would move to another location, and so you had to kind of lock it in. But it really was the writers. I mean, we would go in and rehearse, and they'd do a run through for them on Tuesday, and then they'd stay up late that night and rewrite, and then they come in and give us new pages, and then we do those. Then we do a run through for them, and then they rewrite, and they're rewriting right up until the very end. And so I really credit the writing. We were lucky enough to get some really incredible writers.
Now, of course, the old Newhart show, season 1 comes out, I believe, first week of April on DVD. Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow. Did you ever think that would come about? People.
Well, I'll tell you, Keith, I had TV Land is doing a series of things. They did Jackie Gleason. They did a statue of Jackie Gleason outside the bus terminal in New York, and they did Andy Griffith in his hometown, and they did Mary Tyler Moore in Minneapolis. And a year or so ago, they did I Got a Statue in
I was going to ask you about that, yeah.
And it really was a surreal feeling because it happened to be a part of Michigan Avenue that I'd probably walked by 700 times in my life because I used to go to school a couple blocks away at Loyola University. And, I mean, if someone had told me 50 years ago there's going to be a statue of you there one day, you would have said, right. What are you drinking?
And can I have some? This has just been an honor to talk to you. And I watched your show when I was a kid, and I watched the next Newhart show, and I've always been a fan of your records, and it's been an honor.
Well, thank you, Keith. That's very nice of you.
You bet, and we'll see you on Saturday.
Terrific.
All right, thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.